All right, guys, today I'm going to be showing you how to repair a problem on the 6.5 liter diesel where the heater hose quick disconnect coupling on these old body style trucks. It's made of a pot metal kind of material, and it tends to get corroded over time at the point where it screws into the aluminum housing, for the casting rather, of the thermostat housing. And I ended up filming this repair a couple of years ago and had a problem with the MacBook and lost the whole video. And I had an opportunity now to actually show you this because I have a replacement casting that someone has sent me, and it has this thing ready to break off, and I'm going to repair it for them, and I'm going to film that and show it to you today. But before I did, I wanted to talk a little bit about what would be involved in accessing this, and I'm going to actually show you off camera, or off vehicle rather, in the shop, actually replacing the piece and how to deal with it when it breaks off. To actually get access to it, all you really have to do is unbolt the air compressor. You're going to take the serpentine belt off, of course, and unbolt the air compressor and very carefully lift it out of the way so that you have maximum access to this. As you can see, in the case of this vehicle, you have your coolant lines running right over what you need to access. Once you get that out of the way, I didn't really find anything else that was problematic for me. If you got in a pinch, I would imagine you might, I say stress might, you might have to take this turbo housing off and then this crossover for the intake manifold if you needed to get a particular tool in here. I happen to have had a drill when you see me use the tool later that I was able to get in here with just this out of the way. But I could imagine if you had a conventional drill or maybe an older one that was larger, you might have to get this out of the way as well. With this bar reduced here, these two undone, and you take that off. But the main point of this video is to talk about how to replace this when it breaks off in the casting. So let's go take a look at that on the shop bench. All right, guys, I've got the thermostat casting assembly in the vise here so I can show you how to do this kind of repair that we were talking about earlier. The first thing you're going to have to do when you're in the vehicle is to get this coolant pipe to let go of the quick connect. Now, on these years, it's held in on each side. There's a cutout opening on the coupling piece we're trying to remove, and these black fasteners, or I don't know what you want to call them, like this, these clips allow it to grab the edge here on both this side and the opposing side. All you really are supposed to have to do is give this a squeeze and wiggle it out, and it should let go, just like it's doing on this piece that I've cut off and left in here. And so as you can see on here, this is just a piece of black nylon, and these guys, when you give them a squeeze, they lower down so that they can clear past the coupler. What I've done in the past, if these get stuck in there and they won't let go, or maybe this has gotten bent and deformed because of something hitting it or heat, you can come in here with a box cutter and just cut this guy off on both the top and the bottom, and that way you can get it off. All right, so now we've got this piece. And like I was saying before we came into the shop here, this piece is, unlike the gasoline engines, GM never came out with a replacement part that made this in steel. So this is still a pot metal material. It's not magnetic. You put a magnet up to it, it won't stick to it. And so what happens over time, it reacts with the coolant and eventually breaks. So I'm going to go ahead and try to remove this. I'm expecting it to break off to show you guys how we repair that. I'm using a 1 1/8 inch socket because that's good enough. But if you've got a 28 millimeter, that's probably more appropriate. And we're just going to try and remove this. And like I said, I do not expect it to come off at all. I actually expect it to break just like that. Now, when this first happens, people probably freak out. Oh my God, I got this problem. But this is exactly what always happens with this. You get in really close here, you can see this pot metal just eventually breaks down, and it's the weakest point, and it gives out. Now, you can't put the gasoline version on here that's made of steel because this inside orifice is a different size on a diesel engine. And so, unfortunately, GM never made a replacement that was steel. So if you get the GM part, and I'll roll it at the bottom, it's going to be made of the same material. And you'll end up getting, as many years as you got out of at the beginning when this donor one came off at 96, and I'm told it's the original one. So that's over 20 years. That's not too bad, although they don't normally last that long. So what I'm going to show you is, so what do you do when you get this problem? So how do you extract it? So this is what I usually use. I use this part here from Lisle, part 62450, and it's a heater hose coupler repair kit. It's got a couple of different things in it that we'll need to do this job. Let me see, I've used this before on a couple other times. Unfortunately didn't get to record those, but we're going to record this one. So the first tool I'm going to start with is this one. And so the point of this tool is to go in here and try to bite into the material that's left and then try to extract it. If that doesn't work, and it sometimes does, it depends on how old this is and when it was last repaired. I'm suspecting in this case it's not going to work. If that doesn't work, then we're going to move up to this tool, which is this going to go in here and drill this out. And then after we drill it out, we're going to use this tool, if I get it to let go, we're going to use this tool to rethread it. So it's a self-contained kit here. The only thing you're going to need in addition to what it comes with is either a crescent wrench or a socket that fits the end of these two, small hammer, and when you get to the point of using it, a drill. So let me get a couple other tools here so we can get started and we'll come back. All right, guys, before we hammer this in here, I meant to show you something else. I got a magnet over here I was talking about before, if I can get it to let go of the vise. All right, so you can see this guy sticks as a magnet, but he doesn't stick to this. So again, this is a non-metallic, non-ferrous type metal, pot metal. And also, I forgot to show, when we pulled this pipe out, when we pulled out of the vehicle, there's going to be another piece that's usually in here, like a little sealing piece. Sometimes it'll come off with the whole thing. Sometimes it'll stay in there. Don't forget to chase that. So you're going to want to reuse it if you're keeping this pipe. But if it stays together, you're lucky. But if not, that's where it is. Okay, so let's go on and use our first tool. So let's see if we can put this in here and try to extract what's there. Now, when I start doing this piece, what I like to do is take a little bit of blue paper towel or a little bit of a rag or something. And since, I'm on the vehicle, in this case we're not, but right, normally would do this on the vehicle. I don't want any of these chips and pieces of this metal to get into the assembly and potentially cause a problem with the thermostat. So I'll usually put something in here like this with the thought that later on I can go in there with a pick and pull it out. All right, so let's try hammering this in and see if we can go to the next step or not. Sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't, but we'll start with this piece first. Now you don't want to put too much hammer pressure on it because this is an aluminum casting and you don't want to expand this so far that you cause a crack, because then you're definitely in a situation where you got to replace it. All right, let's see if we can get this to bite in or not. Now, I'll be frank with you that I've done this repair on probably 3 different vehicles times, and I've only had this particular approach work once, so I don't expect a lot of success with this. What typically happens is what's happening now, right? So the material is so degraded that as you turn these teeth, it just chews into it. But don't give up right away. Sometimes, you can use that to get past that into some metal that's still a little harder that won't fragment. You can give it a couple more tries before you abandon it and shoot to the drill. But nope, in this case, I'm not getting anything, but it's just chewing it apart. So the material is just too degraded and broken down, so we're going to have to move on to the next step. The next step is this drill. So this drill is going to start off drilling in the interior piece, and then it's going to go wider and get the piece all the way around. So fortunately, this thing is centered because of the way it typically breaks off, is which this tool counts on. So just going to get a drill, mount this guy on it. Now for this piece, because I'm going to be getting a lot more, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get something to put under here and catch the debris. So I'm going to come back after I get that, like a little bag or something, just so this debris doesn't get all over the place. And then I'm also going to pull this small rag out and put a larger one in there. So we'll come back in a minute. All right, so I'm just going to hang this guy over here, like I said, just to help us catch some of the debris when we start drilling. And then I just want to remove the paper towel that we put in here. You can even hear the debris that we already caught from that attempt to remove it falling out, right? So this is very important that this doesn't get inside and clog up one of the thermostats. Of course, worst case, if the pieces get in there, I can show you what you can see from here. You take off these 4 bolts and you'll be able to access the thermostats on the vehicle and you'll be able to pull it out. But, the whole idea here is to try and avoid that problem happening in the first place. All right, so I'm just rolling up a longer towel for this drill part because I want something that's kind of goes in there a little deeper and wedges up. We'll be able to get this out when we're done. Put it right about there. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and take our drill and go ahead and start working this out. Now this metal is really soft. Now I'm going to stop here, make sure that I'm going in evenly. All right, so you see we've already cleaned out the middle. And now what we're after now is the threaded piece of the coupler, and we're going to get that with the second stage. Now hold on a second. I want to try a little bit of cutting fluid to help with the heat here because I see a little bit of smoke coming off, so let me come back and do that. All right, guys. Sorry about that. Just going to put a few drops of this cutting and tapping fluid on there. I think that'll help a little bit with the smoke. And so I'm not necessarily going to film the whole thing here. Just going to keep drilling in here nice and slow, nice and steady. You don't want to rush it because you only get one chance to do this right. And I'll come back when we get this all the way in. All right, guys, we've gotten the crown going. And so at this point, we're going to be drilling in through the threads. And again, you just want to go slow and steady. So you can see at this point, we're just going right along the outer edge. Sorry about that with the drill getting caught occasionally. This particular drill is not really happy with a reverse bit like this. This particular kind of bit, you actually put the drill in reverse at this stage of the juncture, and it drills counterclockwise. All right, so you can see we got just a little bit left. Let me get the flashlight so you guys can see in there. So you can see how much we've done and how much we have left of the original threaded coupler. So I'm going to keep on going through this and we'll come back in a minute. All right, guys, we have got this all the way through now. If we take our flashlight, we can see that we have cleared the material, and we've also cleared the threads, so that's why we now need to go to the second item. So I'm going to remove this reverse bit, and now we're going to go to this guy. All right, so this guy we're definitely going to be threading in manually, and we're definitely going to want the cutting fluid for this. This is another thing where you want to be patient, but the idea here is that these cutting threads will have a pretty easy job because the material that you're cutting through is this soft pot metal. And it's much softer than the surrounding aluminum casting. So once it gets biting in, it'll go in pretty easy. At least that's been my experience with this. And as you go in here, like any other kind of a tap, it's going to be tapered. It'll get wider as it goes in. Now what I like to do is, like, partway through, I like to kind of back it out a little bit, try to clear the threads of some of the shavings before continuing on. You never have too much of this cutting fluid in my book. All right, so at this point, it's getting kind of easy, much easier. You'll notice it. You can try to back it out. And by now, we should be all threaded in for replacement. All right, so I'm just going to give you a quick look in here with the flashlight. So you can see we've recut our coarse threads. Got just a little bit more, I guess I could go to clean up the threads at the very base of the casting. What I'm going to do now, though, is I'm going to reach in here and pull out my paper towel that I put in here to help catch a lot of this material. As you pull it out, the reason I put a lot in there is it'll drag a lot of this stuff. You hear it falling into the paper, or excuse me, the plastic bag that we've got sitting up here for that purpose. But kind of prise on it so you can see you're getting all this crap out of here, all these shavings. And again, you got to remember I've got this upside down, so you'll have gravity helping you much more than I have here with getting all this out. The other thing too is the cutting fluid. If you're generous enough about it, it'll keep it all clumped together. And now what I can do here for what I didn't get out with the paper towel, so I'll be able to take a little plastic tube on the end of my vacuum, shop vac, and get the rest of this. And again, you know, if for some reason a big chunk falls in there or you can't get the paper towel, you just have to take these 4 bolts off, and I'll show this thing taken apart so you can see that angle as well. And you can go in there and retrieve anything. There's never any reason to panic over any of this kind of stuff. I mean, I've had, you know, where you have a glow plug break off in the head or something like that, and you know, it's just a pain. You got to pull the head to get it fixed, right? I mean, but it's not the end of the world. None of this stuff is the end of the world if you know how it works and how it goes together. All right, so I'm just going to continue. I'm going to run this tap through here one more time. And you guys don't necessarily need to see me do that. Just going to get it nice and cleaned off one more time. And then we'll come back and I'll show you how you can clean this thing out if for some reason you need to take off the thermostat cover. All right, so if you end up having to take this off, it's a 15, these 4 bolts are 15 millimeters. You can remove these to get access to the thermostat housing itself. There's one more right here. And that would be your 2 thermostats inside there. They're kind of wedged in there to get a tool to help prise them out. But then we can pull these guys out if we need to. We can get access in here if we drop something in there, a piece of something. Let me go get a a nice soft tool that I can use to prise these out without damaging them, and I'll show you how to get that. You know, in a pinch, you could probably use a screwdriver or something, but I just like to use something plastic to avoid damaging it. Just get one end to prise up. Usually you'll be in business. All right. Right, so we can see down in here that this is the cavity that we drilled out. Looking to see if I got a tool that'll fit down that far. I don't know if I do. There we go, the pick. So you can see we came in from over here where we drilled out. So with access to this first thermostat, you'd be able to see if you had any little pieces. You can see I got one right there. That's really all that got past using the paper towel to wedge in there. If you do it right, you know, you can even put 2 of those paper towels in, and maybe the worst thing you've got is to have to go in here to get the paper towel. Anyway, let's go back to the vehicle and I'll give you some closing thoughts. All right, guys, just to kind of wrap it up, right? So, you know, you can see this unit out of the car. Here's the attach for the inlet hose that you see here. Here you can see the piece that goes down to the water pump, part of the casting, the little elbow. And then, of course, over here, here's the petcock for the fuel. And then you have the boss that the coupler, the quick connect coupler, plugs into that we have now repaired. So I hope this helped you out, and you know, you can leave some questions in the comments section if you want to understand about what I did, or maybe run into some problems, or you have something a little bit different. This is going to be what you should see on a 96 and up with the dual thermostats. The older 6.5s only had a single thermostat, so they have a different casting. So this is really geared visually to these models, these last few that ran on the old body style. But the technique and the tool actually for doing this repair would be just as applicable on an old gasoline Vortec V8 engine with an aluminum intake as well, if this particular piece broke off inside, as you saw. So it's not necessarily diesel specific, but much more common and harder to get at because of the area you're working in. If you like this kind of video, please hit that like button and feel free to subscribe to the channel. I'm doing a lot more of these as time goes by. Thanks for watching.